And now we're going to do our discussion of those 2.5 lectures, 2.5 talks to the board. And we have Diana Goodhart first.
Right.
It's sort of something between an observation and a question. Does this chart, Ward, that we've just looked at, give meaning to when we say the Master's Prayer, "You are without color"?
That's a good question. Yeah, I guess color, Baba never, I don't know. It probably has some reference to this. These apparently are the colors of the Asmans. The plains are colorless, he said, but the Asmans or skies have colors. By the way, Nadia chose the color of the plains and the seventh plane. You know Rano's chart, the 10 circles chart that she drew? The dais where Baba is on the very top one, Baba picked that color. So she chose that color for the seventh plane. The seventh plane is colorless, but if you're an artist, that's not in your palette. So she picked this one.
Okay, Elizabeth.
Well, I just wanted Ward to explain a little more about the chart, about the figure 36, and the direction of the arrows of the on and off ramps, and just anything more you can say about the chart.
Yeah. Now, don't put too much importance on those ramps. We were just trying to give chart expression to what Baba had said about there are ramps leading from the plane to the Asmans and back the other way. That's all.
So going back to what was referred to in the Nothing and the Everything, that chapter on the 7 highways and 14 byways is one that I found very intriguing and was wondering what Val was referring to. So can you just show where those highways and byways are on this chart then?
I don't see it. I wouldn't want to try to relate to that concept because Baba hasn't talked here about anything like that.
Okay. So, well, do you think it could be the highways, just that direction from first plane to seventh plane, and the byways, if you multiply by times 2, you would get the ones to the skies, you know.
Maybe it refers to that. Yeah. Yeah. So there is a difference between the planes and now Baba never, you see, he gave this explanation to these boys about the Asmans, but isn't it interesting that he didn't bring it up again, like in Discourses or God Speaks, or actually there's a lot of material in the Mere Message and Ramju's Philosophy and Teachings. I'm working on an edition of this right now. And Ghani revised this again in the Meher Baba Journal, where a lot of this content from creation and its causes is recapitulated. But all of them stopped at this point, and none of them went on to the planes, and none of them talked about the Asmans. So this topic of the Asmans did not find its way into Baba's later explanations. Isn't that a curious thing? But it would make sense to me that musts are advanced souls who have gotten off into the Asmans. It just sounds exactly like that. Baba never gave that explanation when talking about them. But as I say, Baba wasn't talking about the Asmans at all in those later years.
Well, I'm next, so let me just say that this makes perfect sense to me that he was explaining this in such great detail to the boys, because he's preparing for them for what they're about to start experiencing.
Right. That's right.
And he's making it very clear to them, don't get caught up in any of this. Just let me take you through this. So that made a lot of sense to me. I have a
Mhm.
question about, this notion of, on page 240, I think it is. Baba mentions that tells the story of a beggar with 45 children.
Yeah,
And I
yeah, I
think,
know.
what in God's name was he thinking? Would that have been normal in those days, do you think? Or
Well, I think it's an analogy just for somebody, you know, I guess
desperate?
fathers with big families would feel under tremendous and pressure to feed their kids. So he was speaking about something to which people could relate. Of course, 45 is a bit beyond the average size of an Indian family, even then. But what strikes me about this is I've always thought about the temptation to use occult powers as just for self-indulgence, a purely selfish thing. Whereas the beggar who has 45 kids, well, you could sort of sympathize with him, right? He wants some money to feed his kids. And Baba is comparing the temptation to use the powers of the fourth plane to this.
Yeah,
So maybe on the fourth plane, there's a dimension where you feel a pressure to do something for others somehow.
that's
Maybe you've
exactly what I
got
was
people
thinking.
following you or dependent on you or something like that.
Yeah, it's very striking to me.
It's very different than every other example Baba ever gave that
Yeah.
I can think of about the temptation to abuse the powers of the fourth plane. Again, it almost seems like, sympathetic of the poor guy. He's got to feed his kids. Of course, he's going to use his occult powers. But
Mm.
Baba's saying that can lead to disaster, that
Well,
kind of motive too.
speaking of occult powers, it really struck me later on when he mentions that if you have a guru and you progress to the fourth plane, you drop your body, you get the next body. You're born as a baby with fourth plane powers.
Yeah, right on the
Can you
fourth plane.
imagine? I mean,
And
it's
if you,
like
hmm,
I would think that the spiritual hierarchy would have to be all over that baby to get through the temptations, because
a 2-year-old, you like start to
yeah,
say, no, the
I'm,
universe gets destroyed.
I'm picturing some of those cartoon movies that have been out recently about babies with huge powers. Okay. And let's see, Marilyn's next.
Okay.
Hmm.
The term avataric period was mentioned, so I just wanted to hear what your thoughts were on that, because I used to think it extended for 100 to 200 years past the dropping of Baba's body, and I've heard people that argue differently. And then also, I found it interesting that he is helping people that are not only in his circle, and is he able to help non-circle people after dropping his body?
Hmm.
I'm-
Well, yeah. This lecture is not really talking
Okay.
about that, so I
Okay.
don't, I'm sure he can,
Oh,
but
okay.
yeah, the thing about non-circle, he seems pretty clearly to be telling these boys they're not in his circle. At
Mhm.
least I read it that way, right? Doesn't it sound like that? But he is saying that the avatar, unlike a Sadhguru, can has such powers. He can give realization to lots of people outside his circle. And here he's also saying that the avatar can bring them back down to do work within creation, which is usually reserved for circle members. But he's basically telling them, I have the power and I'm planning to use some of you for my work within the created world.
Mm.
It's a very remarkable thing. There's no other example I can think of in Baba's entire life. The avataric period, I'm taking that here just to mean the time when the avatar is on Earth and
Okay.
doing his work on Earth. But
Okay.
this is, again, most remarkable because Baba had not described himself that way, and did not use that word very often, actually, at this early date. So this is a remarkably singular period. Again, I think it's his special work with these boys. He's telling him, I'm the avatar and I have special work and I can use you for this work. So
Okay.
he gave this revelation to these kids that he had not given to others. There were a few references, like Maharaj told them Baba's the avatar. And there were a few like little examples of things like that, of hints of avatar. But this is one of the most important from this early period.
Okay, thank you. And just one other quick question. I noticed him using both the capital Guru and Sadhguru. Can you explain a difference, or is that the same in this?
It's the same. It's the
Okay.
same. When the
Okay.
word guru was used in the text, I usually would just keep it as guru, but capitalize it when it seemed obviously to be referring to a God realized guru.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. And Tim Garvin, please unmute.
Yeah, I don't know what's been covered in the last issues. I'm only on lesson 8, but the question I have that I've had a long time and I'm thinking about is the idea of those under the guidance of a guru and those not under the guidance of a guru, and what that might mean in sort of, actually, I want to use the word phenomenological. I mean, what does it actually mean to the spiritual experience or the consequence of the day of daily life, and because in the discourses we hear that there's a certain amount of direction that the master gives, and of course in a disembodied master, which Meher Baba is now, or in any disembodied Sadguru like Nanak or Upasani, whether they can be gurus now. Can your guru be Sai Baba, or and also in the discourses or somewhere, Baba said that the highest road is through the God man, and is that then the guru for all? These questions are hard to answer in my view, because there's many different currents of information and thinking about them, and also we wonder, when a guru is disembodied or embodied, what, for instance, does a guru do? I mean, so many, like Meherji lived for years absent Meher Baba, and many others did as well, and yet they were circle members, as we think. And so I'm just curious to know if you or anyone has any good information, or it can kind of remove the veil from that subject, which is a difficult subject. I even talked to Mercer Reduce about it years ago, and she was convinced that, and although I don't think she quite, I wish she were here now. She probably is, to discuss this more fully. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. But that is something that's on my mind, and you may hear me harp on that from time to time.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're right. There are many different countercurrents and perspectives on this whole question of who can be a guru and so forth. That I don't think I would attempt to approach that question in relation to this material, because here Baba is basically telling them, I'm here. You have the rare opportunity to be with an incarnate guru. Don't take the opportunity and create love. So he's really giving them the thing. You've got a master, and they're really, really hard to find. This is a golden.
The question is, even as he talked to them, stood before them, what effect did he have on them phenomenologically? What was his being in the moment with them doing to them? And when he left the room, he was now 50 yards away. And this is all an imaginative experience, we know, and we probably know, even looking at the picture of the master. In fact, Meher Baba said, when the picture becomes alive. But it is a question that deserves wide thought and deep thought, and I'm not sure we You know,
Mm.
there will be in days to come, likely, and if we ever get instruments to measure things like that, that will be a science of spirituality. We don't have yet, but it would be interesting to know. I mean, these things are left rather vague and have been throughout history, as far as I can see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one thing one can see from this example is that the effect that Baba's dealing with the boys at this time, this was the main time in the day when he saw them, although he saw them other times too, but this was a big event. And the effect on it was on them, however it happened, whatever the phenomenology was by which that work and contact was made, the effect was absolutely spectacular. They went love mad. And it was right at this time that this was happening. In fact, 2 days after this, January 1st, was where the dam broke, and the entire student body began weeping uncontrollably for hours. And the Mandalay couldn't do anything about it. So however he was doing it, he was doing it. I wish I had taken proper advantage of the opportunity with Spendier Vasali. But I do remember him I have this impression that, and it's probably in relation to these talks, but maybe it's other occasions where they were with Baba, that these boys were throwing themselves all over Baba. They would grab him and tear on his clothes and tear on his hands and fingers and just wouldn't let go. And apparently at the start of these talks, they would all embrace him. And at the end, they would all embrace him. And at one point, Baba said, okay, half of you do at the start and half at the end. And I'm just guessing this, that it was such a scene that he had to cut back on it. So these kids were going love mad.
Well, we can imagine that when an avatar or a Sadhguru with infinite power, infinite consciousness, can create any effect he likes in creation, and for whatever reasons of evolutionary use to humanity that was for, we don't need to know. But for us now, 50 years gone or 100 years gone, it would be useful for us, or for posterity, philosophy, for an ontology, for an understanding of the working of spirituality, to come to terms with what it means to have a guru, because this is said in this lecture particularly, the importance of a guru. To have a guru means something happens after you die that doesn't happen if you don't, and those are significant issues that have a bearing on the way we live. You know, to follow the God man, does that mean you have a guru? Or us Baba lovers, does that mean we have a guru? You know, these are important questions. And of course, you know, then you come to the idea that Aurobindo Ghosh considered the inner master. And I'm convinced in my own thinking that Meher Baba had that same feeling, that the inner master, Baba said, "I never come, I never go," and you know, there is that inner sense he called the conscience, or that Aurobindo called it the psychic being, that was the soul self that manifested behind the heart, deeper than the heart. I'm going on a bit here because these are some of the thought paths that merge together. But you know, we do have to come for posterity's sake, we who can think about this and are interested in this subject, because now this particular essay has given us very important directions about have a guru or don't have one. Here's what happens. So there must be something phenomenological in the spiritual world that matters, that has a causal function here. Yeah.
By the way, you guys did take note, I hope, or I'll just mention it again, that this is new information too, so far as I know, that if you're traveling on the early first three planes without a master, at death, you fall back to gross consciousness. and you have to do it over. You have to recapitulate your progress. Although Baba has said here that you get an opportunity in the next birth to turn again. But it's like you've got to retrace your, it's like climbing a big mountain. You've got to climb it all over again. But here's one of the differences that he said, that with the master, you don't have to recapitulate. You get, you resume at the point where you were.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So the effect of a master is kind of what I'm querying
Yeah.
about. I think maybe we don't have an answer, but it's a rich subject.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tim. Elizabeth.
So that reminds me of Sisyphus. So without a master, you have to endure what Sisyphus did, going to the top, rolling stone to the top, and then going back every time. But with a master, with the avatar, you get to the top of that phase, and then you can go to the next one and the next one without
Right.
rolling backwards. Anyway, Sisyphus.
Yeah.
A good analogy for my mind anyway. I
Mm.
was interested in this concept of turning. You know, I got fascinated when Baba talked about the hat that turned and the change of the focus or the consciousness, and also the turn and the fourth plane. And what I want to know, what does it mean in our lives to get turned? Like if a person gets turned by God, or however we get turned when we're living in, you know, the lives we're living now, and we are connected to Mayor Baba, so I'm sure everyone eventually gets turned, you know, who's connected to Baba. But what happens to a person who gets turned? Do they become happier? Do they have they obviously have to have a change in consciousness, but anyway, I just wanted your comments on that.
Well, I'm just thinking to stick to this text, since this is our first exposure to it. These are very big questions that will have to be, can very fruitfully be explored, you know, as we progress. But for the present, just want to stick to what Baba is talking about. And here, whenever he talks about turning, he seems to have a very definite intention with respect to these boys. Turn away from the world, turn towards me by creating love for me. And he seems to be implying that by doing that, they will actually do that spiritual turn from the outer world to the inner world, which corresponds to the inauguration on the spiritual path. So for here, turning seems to mean get on the spiritual path. And yeah, I can't think of any other body of discourse of Baba's where the theme of turning is hammered on more insistently than it is here.
So my question's really, Baba's asking these boys to do this turn,
Right.
So in their daily lives, what is the manifestation of the turning in one's daily life? That's the question.
Well, for these boys, it's create love and remember me. That's what he's telling them.
So if we were to apply that to ourselves in any situation that's difficult that we're going through, then it seems that we would need to apply Prem, whatever that means.
Well, that's what the emphasis of this text is. You know, we're dealing with this one text, which is really focused on this very unusual group of kids. So how we apply that to our lives more broadly, we would need to bring other materials to bear on it. But since this is the first time anyone is reading this, I'm trying to stay focused on what the book actually focuses on. And for these kids, it was create love. And again, it's create love. It's not like open yourself to love or receive my love. No, he's saying create love. He wants something active from them. He wants them to exert themselves, whatever that means. And obviously it was happening, you know. Yeah, you see, here's one thing. We've been just been reading these lectures, but remember that the whole first section of this book is a history of what was going on. And so that's very relevant, all of this. We've skipped right over that because we didn't have much time. And also there's a lot more. I would really, a very wonderful book, totally relevant to this is Ramju Abdullah Sobs and Throbs. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm.
Okay, my turn. I wonder if we could go to page 241.
Oh, okay. Let's see, where are we here? Okay.
And-
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that it? Go down towards the bottom. Oh, I'm sorry, the just right there, that paragraph, such are the perils.
Yeah.
For such a one is permitted only to see and not to experience the full enjoyment. That
Yeah.
is, from the beginning of the path onwards. The guru never allows him to stray into the city and get engrossed in its pleasures, but instead forces him onwards from station to station. I think that would be really important for the boys
Mm-hmm.
to know that they can trust, in a way that they can trust what's happening to them,
Yeah.
that the guru is making it happen. And that strikes me as a pretty interesting way of looking at it. That they can feel that, I'm over. I don't even know if they ever questioned their state. It's hard to imagine whether they question their state when you're
No,
that
I don't. It
into
doesn't
it.
sound like it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
there's one of the talks in the next section of this whole book, Talks to the Mandali. Baba is talking about the education of young people. And he does say when they're young, go ahead and create spiritual enthusiasm, even if it seems out of control, even if it seems over the top, don't worry about it. Let it happen. That
Yeah.
will be the best thing for them. It's sort of implied is they're going to get older and have to deal with reality and all that's going to happen. But this is the time to have that exposure to the real power of love.
Mhm.
And that's what he was doing with these kids. Yeah, but he is making it really clear with me, the guru, Baba, you're safe.
Mhm.
Probably with some of these kids who then started experiencing the planes, I imagine that was a big factor. It's probably pretty scary.
I would imagine so, especially the fourth plane. The thought of
Sure.
being on the fourth plane terrifies me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Farish Day.
Mm.
Oh, boy. Million things come to mind as people are speaking, but I just wanted to comment on a couple of things, no questions. One was I had the strong desire to read the names on that chart in Farsi with the pronunciation, if I may.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Would love it.
That glorious chart. That's
Yeah.
by the way, have you guys thought about royalties to Nadia with all these posters you're making?
Don't tell her. Don't tell her.
Well, one of the rules, just so that you know, is that if you do work on trust copyrighted stuff, Baba's words, you give your copyrights to the trust.
Of course.
That goes for me too. I know you're joking, but I just want to
clarify. Yes.
Yeah.
Farish Day,
Okay.
did you want to read on the previous page where they're listed or on this page, on the chart?
Either one. Let's go to the, maybe
I
it's
find
easier
this-
to read
yeah.
on the.
I find
Yeah.
this really beautiful.
Mm.
The first sky or Asaman is called Alame Vaktiye. Vakt is time or moment. And
Mhm.
just as Ward said, it's almost like a timeless word. It's that, it's just timeless. The second
There's a
sky
really
also-
great, one of the greatest treatises on Sufism was
Mm.
written by someone named Kushairi. I've often
Mhm.
thought it would be worth it. If ever the Baba community wants to bring Sufism into the picture, this is the place I would start. And the first term he talks about is waqt, and he gives a magnificent sense of what the resonance of that word.
Mhm. In Farsi, for instance, if you want to say what time is it, you can use that word also.
Mm.
Or is it, what is it the time for? Is it the time for reflection or dancing, or, it's just a beautiful word. So I totally agree. The second sky or Asaman is called Alame Ruhani. Ruhani is the spirit or soul. So the or actually a person who's Rohani is also a person who is spiritually inclined. The third sky or Asaman is called Alam Quds, word and my favorite word, because we follow the Hafiz al-Qudsi version. Yes. And that is a name of God, and it means purity. The fourth sky or Asaman is called Alame Mahfuz. And the word comes from Hefs or Hafez, which means hidden or absorbed or covered. So it has it's Arabic word with many roots that you can dig up. The fifth sky or Asaman is called Alame Asrar. And Asrar is the plural for ser, which is a secret. And this word is great because, all these questions we have in our heads, our intellectual questions really are, some of them are just you're gonna have to wait to get there to get the answers to some of these unanswerable questions. The fifth sky or Asaman is called Alama. I did that already. Sixth sky or Asaman is called Alame Janan. Now I know a word here, you have it as Janani, but typically I've seen it as Alame Janan, which is the beloved. The seventh sky or Asaman is called Arshe Mola. Mola is just like Molana or Mola is the God, the greatest. And that's that I had the desire to.
Yeah, that's
pronounce.
nice. It's nice to hear them read properly, and these are beautiful phrases, aren't they?
And there's
Yes, they
something
are. And
magic in them.
They're so
this version.
descriptive.
Yeah.
Yes, beautiful. The resonance in the words too.
I sent this to Carl Ernst. You may know Carl Ernst. He's one of the world's leading Sufi scholars, and asked him if he had ever seen a series like this. And he said he hadn't. I mean, all the words are familiar. There's no issue with that. But as a sequence or a system, he said, no, it didn't correspond to any system he had seen before.
Yeah.
Can I ask?
Do they have the
some of the
notion of the
Sufi-
skies in Sufism?
Yes.
Asman
Yes.
is
Yes.
a
So they do have a notion. Okay.
yeah.
I'm
Can I
sorry.
ask Farishta a question?
Sure, but can I also finish kind of my thought about my comments, unless it's related to what we're just talking about?
This will relate to the pronunciation of some of these.
Okay, go ahead.
So if we're trying to read it properly in future, the W is pronounced as a V, is that correct?
Well, there is no W in Farsi, so
Waqtiya.
in Arabic, it's wa. But in Farsi, there's no wa, it's v. And this, the first one, Alame Waqtiya is probably an Arabic word because waqtiya is Arabic, whereas in Farsi it would be alam waqt.
Yeah.
So
Carl said that Vaktiya is the feminine plural, and he thought singular, and he thought that was rather odd.
yeah,
That
I felt it was odd too, but you know,
Anyway, that's what
whatever.
the text gave us.
Mhm.
So I heard a V sound when you said it. Is just repeat it the correct way.
You see, one of the questions is whether we're talking about Persian or Arabic.
Oh, well, in the Farsi then.
Well, in the Farsi it would be alam waqt, waqt. V-A, whatever it was has been transliterated as Q. So VAQT would be waqt. But this is waqtiya, and I believe it's correct as the way Baba said it. The other thing I wanted to say is just a comment on perhaps what Tim Gavin mentioned about, well, do we have a guru? Is Meher Baba our guru? And my immediate response was, duh, of course we have a guru and a master. Otherwise, what are we doing here? Focusing on him day and night, remembering him, loving him, or trying to love him more and more. And whether or not he can give realization to us or guide us on the plains or on the asamans, or just getting our feet close to the first plane, you know, and avoiding the pitfalls and so on and so forth. You know, that's something I think Baba said he's come to awaken. And again, this is strictly me, so I'm not discoursing or anything. And that awakening is happening with our effort and of course his grace. So ultimately, even if Baba isn't around for the next 600 years, we're going to traverse this path, whether we, you know, like it or not. We're going to follow him, and we are awakening him inside of us. So what a pleasure to be in his company. And of course, a lot of us probably want nothing more than that. But at the same time, he's given us this opportunity here now today to create love, to love him more and more. And I just had to say those words.
Thank you, Thursday. Very nice. All right, I'll take the last question, I guess. Or not really a question. This notion of the world of the moment is just so striking to me. And it reminds me of the concept of that Eihei Dogen. He was a great Zen master, created the Soto Zen school along with another guy. But anyway, he wrote a fascicle called The Time Being. And that strikes me as the same as this notion of moment. The time being is being time. He described it as the time being is time, and being is time. And the other thing he said is that we do everything for the sake of the time being, meaning everything is temporary. So there's a whole, I wouldn't say school, but a whole series of commentaries and so forth on that particular fascicle, which really comes alive for me with this notion of Vaktiya. And it also struck me as Farishte was describing it, that it also has a relationship to the notion of suchness in Buddhism. Suchness meaning, you know, it just is and nothing more.
You know, I would really recommend, I've done it, said this already, but again, this very famous Sufi treatise by Kushairi. It's actually
How do you spell that?
Qushayri, something like that. The version I have is not, it's actually a longer treatise, but I have one section on it. And it's dedicated to the explication of terms. But this is so remarkable. It makes me think this guy must have had a perfect master or something to give an account such as he has done. The first is Waqt, but the Fanabaka, a lot of these terms, but the way he explains them is not ordinary. It's not the scholar's definition. This is a mystic showing secrets. I've
Well,
often
Greg,
thought,
do you have a PDF version of that you may be able to share with the students?
I probably could dig it up. Carl Ernst had recommended a certain book, and this was a section. I'd like to get a translation of the whole thing. This is very famous. It's one of the really famous treatises of Sufism. He was like the 11th century. He's someone famous like Hujwiri. I don't know if you know Hujwiri, but they're really great mystics in the 11th century started writing treatises on Sufism then.
Yeah, contemporary with, hey, how you doing? And why don't you bring it with you, Ward, and maybe we'll do a little spotlight on it.
Yeah. No, I have it on my computer.
Excellent. Mary, J Baba.
Hey, Baba. Sorry, I couldn't find where the hand was to raise it before, so I'm late in doing this. I just wanted to thank Fresh Day for what you added towards the end of your sharing. That was deeply important to me because that's exactly how I feel. Thank you. Jai Baba.
Thank you.
Yeah, we've gotten enough training with Bao, and Mani used to say, never go back. You're always going forward, which to me says we are with Baba until we're done.
Mhm.
Well, you want to
So,
go
yeah.
ahead and stop the share, Ward? I think we're.
Yeah,
coming-
I'm going to
Oh, I'm
have
sorry,
to go.
Yeah.
I'm not in.
Cheryl. Oh, okay. Cheryl, do you have a quick question?
Yeah, I just wanted to know what country he was from, the man you were just referring to,
Shara?
Kushairi.
I've forgotten if it's Iran or Iraq or, if you look him up, his name will come right up. He's very famous.
So that's
Kushairi.
Q-U-S-H-A.
Shayry or RI.
Okay.
Really a famous guy. This is one of the great treatises on Sufism.
I'll see if I can look it up and find something. So we're going to end the recording. So hang on a second. And